Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to a new episode of Huda Tonight for this Sunday, the 11th of December of the year 2016, the 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal of the Hijri year 1438. As always, a series of Muslim world-related news will come your way, as well as our regular This Day in History and weather forecast segments. We'll also have a topic for discussion in our social segment with our regular distinguished guests. And that topic will be, I guess, an interesting one, how to stop bad habits. How to stop bad habits. That will be our topic later in the program. But as always, we begin with a look at the news headlines. At least 38 Turkish police are killed in the newest bombing in Istanbul. Dozens of Yemeni troops killed in suicide bombing in Aden. Scores killed in double suicide attack on North Nigeria market. Tens of thousands are left homeless after Aceh quake in Indonesia. The OIC condemns Israel's unabated breaching of international law. Gambia's Jammeh rejects presidential election defeat. Somalia sets yet another date for presidential polls. The CIA believes Moscow intervened to help Trump win U.S. presidential race. And the U.S. assures Afghanistan of continued military support. In our This Day in History segment, we'll look back at the 11th of December 1960, the renowned Algeria protests against colonial France, one of the big steps in the lead up to Algeria's independence from colonial France. Those were the headlines, the news in full after this short break. Please stay with us. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back. The news in full. At least 38 Turkish police officers were killed and another 155 people wounded in the newest bombing in Istanbul when two explosions touched off near a huge soccer stadium late Saturday. A car bombing and a suicide blast aimed at security officers just 2 hours after a football match ended. The blast targeted a bus carrying riot police from the Beşiktaş Vodafone area on the shore of the Bosphorus. Some civilians were also among those killed and wounded, but mostly officers were the ones who lost their lives. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said in a statement that the attack had targeted police and aimed to maximize casualties. The presidential statement described the bombings as an act of terrorism and said that as a result of these attacks, unfortunately, we have martyrs and wounded, quote unquote. Turkey's most visible militant group, the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, or the PKK, has for decades battled the Turkish government for an autonomous homeland in Turkey's southeast. The PKK is widely known for periodic attacks on Turkish security forces, but unlike the Daesh terror group, which routinely targets civilians, the Kurdish militants usually focus their attacks on security personnel. Of course, had the attack occurred 2 hours earlier, perhaps, much more casualties would have fell, and civilians would have also been largely among the victims, the fans at that soccer match. But the explosion occurred 2 hours after the end of a soccer match at the Beşiktaş Vodafone area in Istanbul. Istanbul has been the scene of several bombings this year, including a June attack at Ataturk airport that killed more than 40 people. More than 200 people have died this year throughout the country in attacks blamed on Daesh militants or Kurdish factions inside Turkey. And in Yemen, dozens of troops were killed in a suicide bombing in Aden. The suicide bomber killed at least 50 Yemeni soldiers at a base in the city of Aden in an attack claimed by the Daesh terror group on forces allied to a Saudi-led military coalition. The attacker blew himself up as the troops were waiting to collect their salaries, wounding around 70 others at the entrance of the Sawlaban base on the outskirts of Aden. The Yemeni branch of the Daesh terror group, mainly based in Iraq and Syria, has carried out many deadly bombings around troops in the southern port city, which is under the control of the internationally recognized government in exile in Saudi Arabia. The kingdom intervened in Yemen's civil war in March of 2015 to fight the government's foes in the Houthi movement, but have failed to dislodge the group from the capital Sana'a, despite thousands of airstrikes. Houthi forces were pushed out of Aden in much of Yemen's south last summer, but the government and coalition troops have struggled to enforce their control as Al-Qaeda and Daesh militants use the security vacuum to carry out attacks. At least 10,000 people have been killed in the 20-month conflict, which has unleashed a humanitarian crisis on the impoverished Arab country. Still with news of bombings, scores were killed in a double suicide attack on a North Nigeria market. Two female suicide bombers struck at a busy market in Nigeria on Friday, killing at least 30 people in the latest bloodshed to hit the country's restive northeast. The attack on Madagali, which was recaptured by Nigerian forces from Boko Haram militants in 2015, was the third time the town has been targeted since December of last year, when two female suicide bombers killed scores. While there was no immediate claim of responsibility, the blasts bore all the hallmarks of Boko Haram, which regularly uses women and young girls to carry out suicide attacks in its 7-year insurgent campaign in the troubled region. Boko Haram violence has killed at least 20,000 people and displaced over 2 million since the year 2009. Nigeria's military campaign against the terror group is increasingly bogged down as it confronts suicide attacks, looting, and indiscriminate slaughter. The United Nations has warned that the affected region faces the largest crisis in Africa. The UN estimates that some 14 million people will need outside help in 2017 because of the ongoing violence, particularly in Borno State, the epicenter of the rebellion, where there is already a mini hunger crisis, and there is fear that it will be a mega hunger crisis. And in Indonesia, tens of thousands have been left homeless after the earthquake that hit Aceh. At least 45,000 people have been displaced by the powerful quake that hit Indonesia's Aceh province, as the government in Jakarta and aid agencies pooled efforts to meet the basic survival needs of shaken communities. The estimates of the number of homeless people continues to grow, while relief efforts fan out across the 3 districts near the epicenter of Wednesday's magnitude 6.5 quake, according to the National Disaster Mitigation Agency. Humanitarian groups are now coordinating their efforts from a main command post in the worst affected district, Pidi Jaya. At least 100 people were killed and hundreds injured in the quake, which also destroyed or damaged more than 11,000 buildings, mostly homes, but also several hundred mosques and schools. The displaced are staying in temporary shelters and mosques or with relatives. Indonesian President Joko Widodo traveled Friday to the worst-hit areas of the province and promised to rebuild the devastated communities. And the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, has condemned Israel's unabated breaching of international law. The Secretary General of the OIC, Dr. Yusuf Al-Uthaymin, condemned strongly the Israeli Knesset's adoption of the so-called bill to legalize settlement outposts, stating that such an unprecedented escalation aims to consolidate colonial settlements and seize more Palestinian lands. The OIC chief stressed that Israeli escalation requires prompt movement at the UN Security Council to table a draft resolution that condemns Israeli settlement and put an end to these repeated serious violations against holy sites. In his statements, Al-Uthaymeen considered that such Israeli measures are null and void under international law and constitute a blatant violation of relevant UN resolutions. The Secretary General of the OIC also affirmed that the Israeli bill confirms the continuation by Israel, the occupying power, of its policies aimed at undermining the two-state solution and political efforts and moves exerted by all active international parties with the objective of ending the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian land and establishing just peace. In the same vein, Al-Uthaymeen reiterated his denunciation of the continued Israeli incursions into the blessed Al-Aqsa Mosque by occupation forces and extremist settler groups, warning against these dangerous practices which constitute a grave violation of the freedom of worship and the sanctity of holy sites, which would eventually fuel religious conflict, terrorism and violence in the region. And with us now is Huda TV's correspondent from occupied Palestine, Yusuf Gabin. Brother Yusuf, thank you very much for joining us. And please tell us more about this latest Israeli bill trying to legalize the colonial outposts, the settlement outposts, which are, of course, deemed illegal by the international community itself.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum to you, Assalamu alaikum to viewers of Huda Tonight. Let me first comment on the move by the General Organization of Islamic Operation. I think the move by the Secretary General of the Organization of Islamic Operation, Dr. Yusuf Al-Uthaymeen, is so important, especially in this time. And the Palestinian people appreciate such a move, which condemns the adoption of the bill by Israeli Knesset to legalize settlement outposts. And what we need right now is practical actions and quick communications on the international level and also on the Arab and Islamic levels to put pressure on Israel to stop such practices in occupied Palestinian territories. Right now, we have some 196 illegal Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank and occupied city of Jerusalem. These settlements are condemned, and the international law criticizes construction of such settlements on the occupied Palestinian territories. And these settlements are considered illegal under international law. Relating to the bill, the new Israeli bill, this bill legalizes some 232 settler outposts in the occupied Palestinian territories, and by this bill, these outposts, settlement outposts, will become official settlements by Israeli government. By the way, these are settler outposts are not legalized by Israeli government, but by this bill, the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, legalizes these settlements outposts, so they will become authorized, Israeli authorized settlements, but in the same time, they are illegal under the international law, and the international community criticizes such Israeli practices in occupied Palestinian territories. By such policies, Israeli occupation aims to undermine the two-state solutions between the Palestinian and Israel, and also undermine the political efforts and moves exerted by all active international parties, including the United Nations and also the international community, to end the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian land and establishing just peace. I think these Israeli practices, especially in the late era are supported by the principle which Israel feels that it's free after the winning of the the American Republican candidate Donald Trump. Donald Trump, who will be the next United States president, stated that settlements by Israel does not constitute any obstacle in the way of the peace process. And by his winning, Israel feels itself free to accelerate construction of settlements and also legalize such settlement outposts established by Israeli settlers on the occupied land of Palestinians.
Yes. Brother Yusuf, could you tell us about the latest in the construction of these illegal settlements? I mean, is Israel also speeding up the construction of such settlements and confiscating more and more and grabbing more and more Palestinian lands as we speak? What is going on at the moment? And what about the fate of the Palestinians who live in these areas or around these areas and who are losing their homes and their lands or are a threat of at least being so close to new illegal settlers that could make their life a misery later on?
Look, there is an important point here. Israel does not stop its practices, including construction of settlements and also confiscating lands of Palestinians and demolishing homes, displacing Palestinians. All these racist practices haven't stopped since 1948, since Israel was established in 1948. But what's happening right now, we are witnessing acceleration of these practices by Israel, especially after the winning of the U.S. Next president, Donald Trump. Israel now carries out all these practices, and we see it accelerating such practices. We have threats by the Israeli mayor of the city of Jerusalem near Parakat, who threatens and said that thousands of Palestinians' homes will be demolished in Jerusalem during the next year. He means, of course, before 2020, because they have a plan which states that by 2020 they want Jerusalem a pure Jewish city, which vacant and empty of any other Islamic nature or construction. I mean structure. They need it a pure Jewish city by 2020. This is a declared and public plan declared by the city, the municipality of Jerusalem. We have also, after the winning of this American candidate, after 48 hours only, Israel declared a construction of 7,000 settlements units in occupied West Bank. We have also some 38 demolitions order which were distributed to the owners, Palestinian owners, during the last month only. So such practices and acceleration of such punitive actions and practices, racist practices against Palestinian people, this, I guarantee you that these Israeli practices does not, and it will never allow any future Palestinian state to see light. And even if they now, let's suppose that Israel stays now, okay, let the Palestinian Authority establish its state, there will be no Palestinian state.
Because all the lands have been grabbed.
On the ground, the facts on the ground do not allow any Palestinian states, because we have 500,000 of Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank. We have the whole Jerusalem is occupied, and many attacks are being carried out on daily basis against Jerusalemite people. We cannot see any window of hope for the Palestinians except resistance and except intifada against the occupation of their land by Israeli occupation.
Yes, Brother Yusuf. Indeed, more Israeli land grabbing and thuggery under the eyes of the international community, which only has words to offer. Thank you very much, Brother Yusuf Gabin, Huda
Thank you.
TV's
Thank you.
correspondent from Gaza. And moving on now, Gambia's Jammeh has rejected his presidential election defeat. The Gambian President Yahya Jammeh has said that he rejects the outcome of last week's election, that he lost to opposition leader Adama Barrow only days after he conceded defeat to him in a public address. The fresh announcement he made on state television over the weekend throws the future of the West African country into doubt after the unexpected election results seems to have ended Jammeh's 22-year rule. Jammeh had conceded defeat on state TV last week, but he said that after a thorough investigation, he had decided to reject the outcome of the recent election. Jammeh's announcement presents an unexpected and severe challenge to the incoming Barrow administration, which was already grappling with how to take the reins of power and deal with the Gambian army that for 2 decades was loyal to the president. The latest official figures gave Barrow a narrower win than initially announced, 43.29% of the votes for Barrow and 39.64% for Jammeh. Voter turnout was officially put at 59%. The African Union has called Jammeh's rejection of the results null and void since he had already conceded defeat. The U.S. State Department, on its part, said in a statement that Jammeh's rejection of the results was an egregious attempt to undermine a credible election and remain illegitimately in power, quote unquote. Well, Senegal's foreign minister, Mansour Ndiaye, called for an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council and solemnly warned Jammeh not to harm Senegal's interests or its citizens in Gambia. Senegal, which has Gambia's only land border and entirely surrounds the small riverside country, is a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. Staying in Africa, and also news related to presidential polls, Somalia has set yet another new date for a presidential vote. Somalia's top political leaders have announced the presidential election will be held on December the 28th. This is the 4th date so far set to conclude drawn-out, delayed and limited polls. The new timetable was laid out in joint statements issued by the government, the leaders of Somalia's federal states and the election body. It said parliamentary elections underway since October must be completed by December 14th, with the election of speakers of the lower and upper houses on December 22nd and the vote for a new president on December 28th. Somalia's polls have been delayed and diminished due to political wrangling and violence that has struck the country by militants of a Shabab group. The original promise of a one-person, one-vote national election was abandoned in 2015 due to insecurity, political infighting, and lack of basic requirements such as an electoral roll. Then a date of August 2016 was missed, with the presidential vote rescheduled for September the 10th, October the 30th, November the 30th, and now December the 28th. Somalia's international donors and backers are eager for the chance for the change of government to happen during this calendar year, allowing them to stick to the 4-year presidential terms laid out in Somalia's interim constitution. And still with news related to presidential races, the CIA believes that Moscow intervened to help Trump win the U.S. presidential poll. The CIA has concluded that Russia intervened in the 2016 election to help U.S. President-elect Donald Trump win the White House, and not just to undermine confidence in the U.S. electoral system. U.S. intelligence agencies have assessed that as the 2016 presidential campaign drew on, Russian government officials devoted increasing attention to assisting Donald Trump's effort to win the election. Citing U.S. officials briefed on the matter, The Washington Post reported that intelligence agencies had identified individuals with connections to the Russian government who provided thousands of hacked emails from the Democratic National Committee and others, including the chairman of Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, to WikiLeaks. U.S. President Barack Obama has ordered intelligence agencies to review cyber attacks and foreign intervention into the 2016 election and deliver a report before he leaves office on January 20th. Obama's Homeland Security advisor, Lisa Monaco, told reporters the report's results would be shared with lawmakers and others. Several U.S. observers have said, however, that the intelligence analyst's conclusion about Russia's motives does not mean the intelligence community believes that Moscow's efforts altered or significantly affected the outcome of the election. Russian officials have denied all accusations of interference in the U.S. election. A CIA spokesperson said the agency had no comments on the matter. The Russians appear to have concluded that Trump had a shot at winning and that he would be much friendlier to Russia than Clinton would be, especially on issues such as maintaining economic sanctions and imposing additional ones. According to some U.S. officials, Moscow is also launching a similar effort to influence the next German election, following an escalating campaign to promote far-right and nationalist political parties and individuals in Europe that began more than a decade ago. And Washington has assured Kabul of continued military support. U.S. Defense Secretary Ash Carter has affirmed that America will stick with Afghanistan for years to come as a new U.S. president takes over what is already America's longest war. At a joint appearance in the Afghan capital with Afghanistan's President Ashraf Ghani, Carter said the U.S. cannot afford to give up on Afghanistan after more than 15 years of U.S. involvement, the deaths of more than 2,200 U.S. troops, and the expenditure of hundreds of billions of dollars. Carter was making his last planned trip to Afghanistan before handing off his Defense Department responsibilities to his successor. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has nominated retired Marine General James Mattis for the post. Trump has not said if or how he will alter the U.S. course in Afghanistan, but has announced what he calls U.S. nation-building projects. The U.S. has about 10,000 troops in Afghanistan to train and advise Afghan security forces combating a resilient Taliban insurgency. And now to our This Day in History segment, and we go back some 56 years, exactly 56 years ago, on the 11th of December of the year 1960, the renowned Algeria protests against France's colonial rule erupted, one of the big steps in the lead up to Algeria's independence a short while later. The demonstrations of the 11th of December of the year 1960 represented a power against supporters of so-called French Algeria. It demolished the French thesis and strengthened the Algerian people rallying around their army and the National Liberation Front. These events wanted a firm response to French President de Gaulle's utopian project, Algerian Algeria. These events thus gave a strong impetus to the Algerian cause, just days before its inclusion in the agenda of the General Assembly of the United Nations, whose works had been boycotted by France. The incidents proved the unwavering support of the Algerian people to the FLN and the National Liberation Front and its military section, the NLA. Indeed, the month of December 1960 had seen many demonstrations in several Algerian cities where people went out into the streets to demand the independence of their country, and held in a sign of support to the FLN and the Provisional Government of the Algerian Republic, the GPRA, for the recovery of independence. These angry cries of a people enamored of justice and freedom rang in all popular districts of Algiers, and these events, which stormed the European quarters, also quickly turned into a popular uprising against colonialism and direct clashes between the Algerian population and the colonial forces. The protests, which lasted several days, had spread to several other cities with the same slogans: Muslim Algeria, Independence Algeria. These events had revealed the determination of the Algerian people to challenge the French colonizer and France's commitment to the independence of the country. The savage repression against the Algerian demonstrators made many victims, including women and children, but was shaken in any case the determination of the Algerian people to take its destiny in hand and meet the ultra supporters of French Algeria, saying that Algeria is for Algerians. Again, these events were an important development in the lead up to Algeria's official independence from France on the 5th of July of the year 1962. That's it for our news and this day in history segment. The weather forecast is to follow. After that, a distinguished panel of guests will be here with us in the studio to discuss how to stop our bad habits. Please stay with us. I think we all need to try and do that. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back. How to stop our bad habits. What a difficult task. What a difficult topic to discuss. It's easier. Words are easier than action, actually. So we have the easy task, and you will, not for now, but we will have the tough task later, all of us. Thank you, dear brothers and sisters, for staying with us. It's time now to introduce you to our distinguished guests. With us here in the studio is Brother Mustafa Abdul Qayyum, the founder of the Turjuman Translation Center. Thank you very much, Brother Mustafa, for being with us as always. It's a great pleasure. And also with us for the first time, with me at least for the first time here on Huda Tonight, is Mr. Wa'il Wahba, and he is a finance manager in the oil and gas services industry. He's a holder of the CPA and MBA. Thank you very much, Mr. Wahba, for being with us. Thank you for being here, sir. And of course, as we said, words are easier than action. So who wants to take the easier task first? Okay. The words. Mr. Wahba, please introduce us to this beautiful subject, I guess, but one that's very difficult to implement.
Okay, sure. Actually, first of all, talking about bad habits and good habits, so let's define a habit to start with. A habit, from a scientific point of view, it's the small decisions or the tiny decisions we take every day, or the very small actions which we do every day. And according to researches by Duke University, it says that daily habits, whether good or bad habits, account for 40% of our daily activities. Other researches shows that there is a positive relationship between the level of strength or commitment or motivation the person has and the number of habits, good habits that he or she does. Now, there is a number of researches on the topic of habits, and we are almost there with the new year, and a lot of people goes to, okay, from January I'll start doing this and I'll stop doing that. So what we call New Year resolutions. Actually, researches shows that 92% of the people who plan for new resolutions, unfortunately, they fail to use the good habits and refrain or stop from.
So only 8% succeed.
Yes, and actually, according to another study done by Professor John Norcross, it was a study over the span of 2 years. He observed a number of I would say behavioral changing seekers, and then over the span of 2 years, at the beginning of every year, they have a set of what we call a New Year resolution, and unfortunately, the numbers are somehow surprising. Out of it was like I would say, a failure rate of 81%, 81. So that's mean out of every 10 habits, people succeeded only to change 2 habits. I want to touch base on this from an Islamic point of view, though.
Yes.
You know, there is a famous, it's not a hadith, but it's a famous saying according to the Islamic, you know, science, that every day comes with, you know, in Arabic it says, أنا خلق جديد. The day speaks itself. أنا خلق جديد.
I'm a new creation.
وأنا على عملك شهيد. I'm a newly born day, and I'm witnessing your actions, your speech, everything. And I will not return till the judgment day. So this statement actually encourages Muslims to make the best use out of the day which comes. It's a great opportunity from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He's giving us a new day so we can rectify mistakes, rectify bad habits, and work on maintaining the momentum of the good habits.
Indeed.
Moving on from the statistics, you know, data, I want to touch base on some behavioral psychology point of view. They look into bad habits and good habits on 2 major, I would say, approaches or theories.
Yeah, because things could be relative here, right? I mean, what some people could see as a bad habit, others could see as a good one.
Right.
I mean, there's also an issue of relativity here.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But actually, you know,
but the common ground is much bigger, of course, than
well, of course, like if we're talking about losing weight, so this is common everywhere in the world. Quitting smoking, it's common everywhere in the world. But you know, scientists look to, I would say, the general behavior and attitude of people, especially when coming to changing behavior, for I would say 2 main theories. The first one, it's called the 3 phases pattern. The 3 phases pattern, or they call it the 3 R's. The 3 R's stands for a reminder, then a routine, then a reward. A reminder, a routine, and then a reward. So take for instance the habit of checking your cell phone and looking to your cell phone. So for instance, you know, if your cell phone rings, so this is the reminder, and then comes the routine that I pick my cell phone, and then comes the reward, which is knowing who's calling and why he's calling. So they classify any habit to these 3 stages: a reminder, a routine, and then a reward. According to another theory, they look to any given person, whether he has a bad habit or a good habit, on as like 3 circles. The smaller circle is about the personality and about the identity. And then the bigger circle is about the performance. And then the biggest circle is about the appearance and the outcome. So going to the first circle, the identity, it's the identity or the personality, what kind of person you are. Okay, are you willing to change? Are you willing to quit bad habits? Are you willing to maintain good habits? Are you willing to associate yourself with the right people, with the good friends, and so on? So for instance, I want to stay in good shape. I would say this will be my identity. Comes the bigger circle, which is the performance. Am I going to like make 50 push-ups a day? Am I willing to do so? Am I going to like walk for 30 minutes a day? And then comes after performing I would say the good habit and sticking to it, comes the last thing, which is the outcome. Did I lose weight? How did people perceive that? So this is for any given habit, this is how scientists look at it.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Brother Mustafa, I want you also to lay the floor for us, just like Mr. Wahba did, and please also talk to us about the sources of our habits. I think it's very important to, you know, to take it from the roots, if you will.
My pleasure. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most gracious, all praises are due to Allah, the Almighty, whom we ask to send His peace and
Ameen.
blessings upon his final messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his messenger. Now, relatively speaking to what Mr. Wahb said, I totally agree with him. It's all about how we were raised up in the first place. It's all about how we tend to mimic. As human beings, psychologically speaking, many psychiatrists, many, theorists, they came up and said that people tend to copy the body language of those in front of them. So, like I'm sitting right now, I'm putting my arms like this because Mr. Muhammad is putting his arms as well like this. Because Mr. Wahb is as well putting his arms on the table as well. So we tend to mimic each and every one of us.
Yeah.
And it's all about knowing who you are. It's all about identifying your personality. You have to know what you like, what you dislike, what is it that what you're passionate about. You have to understand the meaning of life. You have to have a purpose. Because those without a purpose in life, they will find that they will get bored easily. They will change simultaneously. They will always tend to mimic the wrong things to mimic in the first place. So this is when the cultural background of Islam comes in. This is where we need to always learn from Allah, because Allah is the one who created us. If we always look outside sources, yes, we can learn from scientific perspectives. We can learn from our colleagues at work. And again, what I'm saying is simply what we all go through to day-to-day basis. But what we can do to understand this topic even more is that we need to put ourselves in it, as a third person. We need to look at ourselves from someone else's, eye glance. Because if we keep looking from our own end, we're not going to be able to identify the flaws or the defaults that we have to fix, and real quick. Now, we always categorize it in certain ways. We always have to prioritize what we do in our daily lives. So let's say, for example, a person is lazy. Why is he lazy? It's because he started off as a young child who would have his requests being met without working hard for it. So as he grows older, he tends to be, as brother, Wahba did state before, the reward system. He tends to seek the reward without going for the phone in the first place. So I totally agree with them. Like some people, they lay on to themselves that I deserve the reward. I just don't want to go for the reward. I want the reward to come for me, to come right to me. And this is not a good thing, because this will result in a very, it's a backlash. He's going to grow up. He's going to be very lazy. He's not going to like to work. He's not going to like to handle responsibilities, or he's going to learn it the hard way. He's going to have a harder time by the time he gets married or handles responsibility household-wise. He's going to go through a lot of, trouble until he gets the use of it.
Yeah, and that's why they tell us to, as parents, to use the so-called tough love.
Yes.
It's better than just
eating your vegetables as well. Some people, if I knew the benefits of milk and vegetables like I do today, I would have told my mother always to cook me spinach and all of the vegetables more than the meat itself. Because once you look at the side effects of certain nutritional supplements or food, you start getting disgusted. You start saying that, why is it that I requested this from my mother when I was younger? Right. So it's all about knowledge. So the first thing that we have to do is that we have to get educated. We need to study more. We need to look at things from different perspectives. We need to not just learn it from a spiritual sense, we also need to implement spiritual things in our lives by action. So how is it, what's the first step after getting educated? Is that I do not mimic a thing unless I ask for a source, or I'm pretty 100% sure it's going to get me, like in a better developed way. Am I developing myself? Am I going to succeed? Is this the right path? And I believe we spoke, remember, last week about failures and how to avoid them and how to, and coming to this topic is nearly the same, but I believe it's a different approach, from a different approach, if I may say so. So once we get educated, once we act upon what we have to, do in our lives, we have to strategize. It's all about strategy.
Yeah, of course, the issue about, stopping to mimic is could be beneficial to us or to perhaps even teenagers, but not children. I mean, children, they will mimic. They do nothing but mimic. So at times it could be too late, couldn't it, for for you to...
Well, this is the job of each and every parent. See, God did not bless me yet with children, but I'm just always, noticing from my friends who are married and have children, they already have children, and I've told them this, and it worked with them by the grace of Allah, is that I told them, it is your job to identify the personality of your child. Your child is counting on you. And your child is waiting for you. He's not going to tell you now. He's not going to come complain to you now.
Right.
He's going to complain to you when he grows older. He's going to say, why didn't you stop me from doing, these idiotic things? He's going to blame you for a lot of things. So you need to identify, is my child copying a lot of kids outside? Is he getting beat up, or is he beating up children? Is he stealing the sandwiches, or is he the one giving the sandwiches by offering them? Is he kind? Is he gentle? I need to identify the signs, and then I need to have a quality dad-son time. Need to sit down with him and say, if he tells me I'm in love with a little girl, I'm like, oh, how cute. But when you grow older, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. And we need to identify the problems with our children, because believe it or not, parents who tend to say that he's still a little child, once he grows, then I will start raising him up properly, it's a really wrong strategy. Because if you really want to enjoy your life in the future, if you don't want to make a lot of hard work when you grow older, you need to work hard once you have the child, if he's 7 years old. If you notice what the Prophet ﷺ said in regards to prayer, he said to them that when it comes to prayer, instruct them when they're 7 and hit them when they're 10. What did psychiatrists say? What does psychology say about this? Say children are more responsive when it comes to body language and when it comes to imagination. So when you come to them and say, do not do so and so, I'm not telling you abuse them, I'm just saying so and so. They understand from the body language. They see that you're vigorous in action, your eyes are getting red, that you don't like it. So when they're younger, they're so, and I even noticed this from my own wife, how her father raised her up. I'm like, subhanallah, am I not being raised up properly? It's like, because I'm serious, this is very weird. It's like, I noticed that she's very shy. When it comes to loud noises outside in the streets, when people are fighting, she says, I can't stand loud noises. I can't, take me out of here. I'm like, subhanallah, we hear it every day.
She needs to leave out of Cairo.
She needs to leave the public area.
This is for sure.
Yeah, she needs to leave this public place right away. And I'm like, why is that? Why is it I'm different from her? It's because the way we were raised up was different.
Yeah.
I was raised up in an area where people around me would tend to take actions by more vigorously, not just from my parents, but also from neighbors, friends, school. And she was raised up by her entire family are teachers. So it's a big difference. My father being a doctor, her family being full of teachers, it's really different when it comes to how it's implemented. So I urge, the family men, the household men, you need, in order to avoid any bad habits from your children, we always have to start from childhood, is that you need to instruct them day by day. Once they grow by the age of 15 or 20, you're going to enjoy a lot of things. And
I really like the perspective of
you.
working hard now instead of
working hard later,
or making life harder on your child later.
And I also have another point as well, if you can.
Please.
Umar ibn Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him. He did something which was very weird. I really respected this perspective. Is that Shajarat al-Ridwan, the Ridwan tree, that in which they pledged allegiance to the Prophet ﷺ. And so Umar ibn Khattab, when he held the caliphate, when he was the prince of the believers, they were in an expedition and they passed by the tree. So he noticed the Muslims, they were saying, isn't this the tree that we saw the Prophet ﷺ and we started pledging the allegiance? And they started, circumambulating the tree, and they started touching it, remembering history. And they were doing it out of love. But look what Umar ibn Khattab said, he said, I notice you returning to the days of Allat wal Uzza, or Hubal, the false gods. So what did he mean by this? He meant that I see that you're returning to the same problem that led, or this mimicking, remember. I see that you're returning to the same traditions that led our grandfathers astray into worshipping those other than Allah.
And wasn't he, Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, that said about the black stone that I know that you're just a stone,
And if it were not for the Prophet ﷺ
I
who
would
kissed you, I
never
wouldn't
have,
have kissed
yeah, I
you.
would
He
never.
had this very high self-esteem.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm serious, he was very
Subhanallah.
proud of his language, his tongue. He would always speak. He was
Subhanallah.
very tough. He was very, he is very built, mashallah. But he cut the tree. As a result, he cut the tree. And this is what, it made me really interested even more, is that he stopped al-fitna, he stopped tribulations before it even started. So he would prevent. So prevention is a really good tactic. That doesn't mean that just because I see my daughter, let's say right now I'm a father, I have a daughter in the university right now, and I start noticing the dating trend, dating trend in universities.
Yeah.
Do I say that just because it's normal, where we live and everything, and no. You have to prevent things before it happens. You have to sit down with her, educate her, make sure that you are telling her how to react, how to take care of herself, preservation, precautionary measures, because the Muslims in the days of the Prophet ﷺ, they used to take all of their precautionary measures. They used to practice intention, and they would implement all of these measures by making sure I will not be naked, if I may say so, to fitna. I will not be, provided, generally speaking, just because I do not drink alcohol doesn't mean that I can confidently, if I am living in Europe, that I can just go and live next to a pub, if I may say so.
Yeah, understood. Speaking about the strategies, we're waiting to hear from Mr. Wahba about the strategies and the tactics, and you started it for us, Brother Mustafa. Brother Mustafa and Brother Wahba, please stay with us.
Sure.
We have to take a break now, dear brothers and sisters. Let's watch this report together and then come back to our distinguished guests here. Please stay with us. Assalamu alaikum.
Over the years, a simple, powerful, proven methodology has been determined for new habit development. It is very much like a recipe for preparing a dish in the kitchen. You can use it to develop any habit that you desire. Over time, you'll find it easier and easier to develop the habits that you want to incorporate into your personality. Here are the 7 steps to developing a new habit. First, make a decision. Decide clearly that you are going to begin acting in a specific way 100% of the time whenever that behavior is required. For example, if you decide to arise early and exercise each morning, set your clock for a specific time, and when the alarm goes off, immediately get up, put on your exercise clothes, and begin your exercise session. Do this repeatedly until it becomes automatic. Second, never allow an exception to your new habit pattern during the formative stages or rationalizations. Don't let yourself off the hook. If you resolve to get up at 6 a.m. each morning, discipline yourself to get up at 6 a.m. every single morning until this habit becomes automatic. A third way to develop a habit is to tell others that you're going to begin practicing a particular behavior. It's amazing how much more disciplined and determined you will become when you know that others are watching you to see if you have the willpower to follow through on your resolution. Fourth, visualize yourself performing or behaving in a particular way in a particular situation. The more often you visualize and imagine yourself acting as if you had the new habit, the more rapidly this new behavior will be accepted by your subconscious mind and be programmed in as a permanent part of your character and personality. The fifth way is to create an affirmation that you repeat over and over to yourself. This repetition of a command to your subconscious mind dramatically increases the speed at which you develop the new habit. For example, you can say something like, I get up and get going immediately at 6 a.m. each morning. Repeat these words the last thing before you fall asleep. In most cases, you will automatically wake up minutes before the alarm clock goes off, and soon you'll need no alarm clock at all. A sixth way to develop habits is to resolve to persist in the new behavior until it is so automatic and easy that you actually feel uncomfortable when you do not do what you've decided to do. And seventh, and perhaps most important, give yourself a reward of some kind for practicing the new behavior. Each time you reward yourself, you reaffirm and reinforce that behavior. Soon, you begin to associate at an unconscious level the pleasure of the reward with the behavior. You set up your own force field of positive consequences that you unconsciously look forward to as a result of engaging in that behavior that you've decided upon.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for watching the report. Thank you for staying with us. We're back with our distinguished guests here. And it's time now for Mr. Wa'il Wahaba to tell us about the strategies, the tactics that we can use to overcome bad habits and perhaps form new good ones.
Yes, sure. Actually, I would like to share with our dear viewers three strategies. They are, they prove to be practical for a lot of people. I would like to start with the, I guess if the cameraman can get these two glasses. Actually, it's called the paper clip strategy. The paper clip strategy, as it sounds a little bit theoretical, or yes, as it sounds a little bit theoretical, but actually it did work to a lot of people, and this is because of the visual trigger behind it. So the paper clip strategy, what we do basically, we get a regular paper, standard paper clips, and then we get two jars or two glasses.
Yeah.
And then we put a number of clips in one glass, and then we determine the habit which we want to get rid of, or a new habit which we need to acquire.
Yes.
So let's take, for instance, if I'm a salesman and I'm, I want to make sure that I send out 20 emails per day to my customers. So what I do is I go to my laptop and I start typing the email. Every time I send an email, I start to move one clip to the other side. At the second email, I put another clip, and so on until it goes to 20. Let's say I want to be in a good shape and I need to go and work out. So I have a target within the week. I will go 3 times to the gym. So every time I go, I start moving on or tossing clips to the other jar. For us as a Muslims, for instance, a lot of Muslims does not like say the adhkar or the supplications. The Prophet ﷺ used to say twice at morning and at night. So it could be a very good habit for our dear viewers and people who are watching us now, that at the beginning of the week have 14 clips on the left side, and then during the week as you go, once in the morning and once at the night, try while driving, while walking into work, to start, move one clip and say the adhkar at the morning, and then later on at the afternoon, make sure that you do the other
or at
adhkar.
least hear them over the
the
iPad or the iPhone or whatever.
Right. A lot of, something else, if you want to have a more healthy habit of eating and drinking, and let's say drinking 8 glasses of water or 10 glasses of water per day. So every time, especially if you are off at home or at home, at the beginning of the day, keep your jar empty and the other one is full, and start with every glass of water, move a paper clip. This strategy worked a lot, actually, according to statistics, even though that it's very practical, it's very theoretical, but it's very practical, and the visual trigger that you are doing something is really adds up to motivating and encouraging the person to adapt the good habit.
Yes.
Another well-known strategy is the step-by-step planning strategy, and this is very common, and actually it works to a lot of people. The step-by-step strategy, that now at the beginning of the month you want to start adapting good habits and you want to get rid of bad habits. So a lot of people falls to the trap of doing so much in a short time. This actually doesn't work. What you need to do is start with easy stuff, tiny stuff that you can manage easily and comfortably. And then, so let's say, start with 10 push-ups a day. Okay, go to the gym once a week, and then move on to the next step, which is building up. So instead of doing 10 push-ups, make it 20, make it 30. And then you move up to the third step, which is building up your real good habit or your real task or what you aim. So you reach, like I would say, 50 push-ups. If this is your ultimate goal, okay, try to maintain the momentum and keep it as is, but it's much easier to break it down to chunks, the separate chunks. And then the fourth step with this strategy, that you make sure that you don't miss twice. Meaning that if today was a very busy, actually for me it was a very busy day traveling from Alexandria to Cairo, and tomorrow I gotta go to work. So I didn't have the chance to exercise at home. Okay, so I know that I missed today. The main important thing that I don't miss 2 days on the row. You need to get back on track the following day right away. And the last thing, you should, keep the amount of effort or work or time that you can actually sustain and maintain for a while. The third strategy, it's called the dominoes effect of the good and the bad habit. Mean that one good habit drag to another good habit, one bad habit push to another bad habit. A simple example to make this strategy clear to our dear viewers is the habit of checking your cell phone. Okay, this is a habit which takes you to another habit to another habit. Now, if you check your cell phone every, I would say, 10 to 15 minutes. So by checking your cell phone, you're checking your social media notifications, and then by checking the social media notifications, you are, browsing within the social media, and you end up wasting 10, 15 minutes of procrastination. So these are different strategies which are used to adapt good habits and abandon bad habits.
Great, great. The paperclip strategy, the step-by-step strategy, and the dominoes effect strategy, I really enjoyed them.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Brother Mustafa, from the psychological point of view now, how difficult or how easy it could be to overcome bad habits or to form new ones, especially taking into account the dominoes effect that Brother Wahba talked to us about, the dominoes effect, because indeed you could be dragged. It's going to be easy if you are achieving and things are going your way, but if you start to stumble and you lose one good habit and then you acquire another bad habit, there could be a dangerous dominoes effect. So the psychological stance, if you will, please.
I believe the best example of studying such things, to elaborate, is that we even notice in the Quran, like we notice in the Quran, what does Allah say? That you have to follow the sin with a good deed. See what I mean? So I believe Brother Wahba brought forth examples which have been already mentioned by the Prophet ﷺ 1,500 years ago, that he would always urge the companions, when you're about to do something, make sure you're doing it for Allah, always psychologically aiming your intention for the right purposes, establishing your faith, your actions, your lifestyle for the sake, of a true and pure purpose in life. So it's all about psychological, effects in your life. This entire religion depends on how you think and how you aim, because it's all about intention in the end. Now, how do we actually look at it from a different perspective, but still within religion, just to better serve the people? Is that, let's say, for example, I personally have problems at work when it comes to, establishing, it's always a race every day between meeting, job tasks and making sure that I pray on time, and in the same time, I want to do my askar, I want to do my, remembering Allah. May Allah, may Allah accept. So it's always, I have breaks. I look for the best opportunities. If I'm not receiving, any calls, if I'm not doing anything, we're just, on the queue, I can read a little bit Quran. I can do anything just to fill my time, because I do not want to die and leave this world regretting any second that I have not done for the sake of God. Now, I remember this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, it's all about prevention as well, that he would always say to the people that, oh, young men, okay, if you are unable to marry, what should we do? Fast.
Right.
So it's all about prevention and you can say relatively establishing another substitute. So those who are unable to marry, it's totally fine. It's not compulsory. It's not compulsion in the first place. But fast, the Prophet ﷺ is advising you fast, and this should be your substitute. Why? That it weakens the body's sexual desires. It weakens the body's sexual desires. It gives you a lot of things. I don't want the people to think that you will have lesser sexual abilities after fasting. No, it'll be actually better. But during the time of fasting, it has been scientifically proven that the vein movement is more tighter. And this is another scientific miracle. It's not our topic, but it's good to mention that the Prophet ﷺ said, when you fast, Satan is unable to walk across your veins, your arteries, everything in your body. Why? Because when they came another 1,500 years later, these days, they found that the vein, when you fast, when you don't eat, it becomes tighter. So this should be a good piece of advice, inshallah, for those who are trying to avoid any bad habits, because if you are unable to marry, people tend to allow certain things. And the Prophet ﷺ is aware. He has been sent as a mercy to mankind. He's giving us, instructions. He's telling the brothers and sisters, if you're unable to do something, doesn't mean that you just stay here and complain about it and try to find negative substitutes. No, fast. Get yourself busy with something. If you have a toothache, for example, when you go to the dentist, they have brought this in videos as well, is that they literally did not inject any anesthetic to the patient, but they conversed with the patient. They just had a conversation with the patient, and they went through the most severe treatment of the tooth itself, and the patient did not feel anything at all. So he's substituting something with something. He's getting busy with something else. The biggest problems we're facing.
That's a good strategy as well.
By getting yourself busy always, because if you're free in the time, Satan will have more effect on you. If you're free let's say I come back from work and I'm alone now. Let's say my wife is at her mother's, she's visiting her. I find it more difficult to avoid doing something haram than when I'm being, observed by those around me, or by doing something. If I don't go to the gym, I'm going to have more chances of sinning. Let's be honest.
Yes.
I'm going to have more chances of sinning than when I'm doing something,
and that's why those jobless people, perhaps, or those, a lot of youth around the world, not just Muslim youth. I mean, it's dangerous to be, to have all that spare free time and no jobs, no motive, no studying, I mean, it's dangerous.
I urge the brothers and sisters to always fast Mondays and Thursdays, because when you're fasting Mondays and Thursdays, there's a lot of benefits. First off, other than the reward, other than the like being healthy, inshallah, you're also psychologically training yourself into being patient, because fasting is all about patience, and this is the best quality that any person can have. And it's such a big blessing. People tend to say that in Ramadan we're fasting, we're having a hard time. This should be prevented. We should always seek to find alternatives. I find people who are reaching Ramadan, they always have a hard time fasting for the following reasons. It's that they didn't prepare themselves. Let's say, for example, I know a lot of the brothers, they like to drink caffeine. Turkish coffee, Nescafe, everything like that. It's totally fine.
About me.
Yes. Even me, by the way. But I understand. But like even before the segment, you have to drink coffee. But
which I did.
So I urge the brothers, what should we do? This is a bad habit, by the way. Like when it comes to Ramadan, and we're not preparing ourselves. So how should we fix this? An example is that I'm in love with coffee. I don't need to prevent myself from coffee. So let's say I used to drink coffee when 9 a.m. This can be difficult in Ramadan. So let's say 2 weeks plan before Ramadan. 2 weeks plan before Ramadan.
Gradual.
I will start taking. I'll start taking coffee 10 a.m. The next day 11 a.m. until I reach the evening time. So let's say after Maghrib. Then I'm in the safe zone and I'll be able to enter Ramadan, without being a coffee, addicted.
Thank you.
Nice piece of advice.
So it's one. May God bless you. This is one of the strategies. Is by knowing what you want. So another tactic is that I'm lazy. I don't like to read Quran a lot, and I just tend to, listen to the Quran more. And even when I'm listening to the Quran more, I tend to be lazy in attentively listening to the Quran. So what is the solution? Is that I tend to start with the surahs that I was raised up in love with.
Yeah.
Because people tend to, what is the reason why most people are addicted to music in the first place? You know, like, I'll tell you one thing. I notice a lot of the brothers who stopped listening to music, they come to me and they're watching cartoons. When they hear a certain, you know, tone of music,
They are familiar
they
with,
start remembering things like Lion King or, you know, these old
Yeah.
cartoons. They're attached to it, both men and women, and both religious men and women and non-religious men and women.
You know, subhanAllah, what you are saying, Brother Mustafa, I was just thinking about it yesterday. And subhanAllah, I mean...
The music part of the Quran part?
No, the Quran, the Quran part. The
Yeah.
Quran part. I was just thinking about it yesterday. I hadn't read for maybe a week or something. And then I listened to verses accidentally, subhanAllah. To verses from a surah that I really love and that really touches me and so on. So I said to myself, and I kept listening until the very end of the surah, and I told myself, okay, I'm going to go back and read that surah. So it's, yeah, it's, I mean, what you're saying is...
memory,
Yeah,
memory, your
yeah.
childhood memories, or how
Yeah.
you were in love with something. But
Yeah.
let me tell you what I've personally noticed.
But we have to take a break.
Oh, of course,
I'm
it's
sorry for that. But what we promise that when we come back, we will discuss more, dear brothers and sisters, with our distinguished guests here in the studio, Brother Mustafa Abdul Qayyum and Brother Wa'il Wahba. Please stay with us. Assalamu alaikum.
Right.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Sorry to have interrupted you, Brother Mustafa, before the break.
No, it's totally
Please
fine.
continue.
It's totally fine. You know, like what you've touched about, you know, like you're able to identify the problem is that you were honest with Allah. When you're honest with Allah, you start noticing the problems in your life, and then you'll be able to solve it. But I find that we can learn a lot from our, you know, like our bad habits. Sometimes it's a form of mercy from Allah. So, you know, that we were able to notice it bad in the first place. That means Allah loves you and He wants you to become better in your life, a better version of yourself. So I believe I see people always, you know, saying in the dua, "Oh Allah, guide me. Oh Allah, guide me." And the Quran is right in front of him, saying ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. That this book has no doubt about it, no doubt about it. And it is only a guidance, of course, for every humanity, but especially for the pious servants of Allah. So people, when they're reading the verses of the Quran, please, brothers and sisters, when you're reading the verses, make sure not to only take the outcome of the story, or just say, oh, he's talking about, you know, the Muslims or the non-Muslims, or how the Prophet ﷺ did. No, please understand the style of Allah's speech.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in an ayah in the Quran, it's very clear, وَإِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنُ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنصِتُوا لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. I mean, so it's, we should focus. We should be very focused.
And he said not only to hear, to also listen, because hearing is different than listening.
Yeah.
Hearing is being able to identify that there's a source of noise.
Right.
Listening is, you know, like being able to concentrate on each and every word. But just to sum up the basic idea, you will notice how Allah is speaking to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and there is no better instructor than Allah the Almighty. When He's saying, an example is from Surah Al-Baqarah, you know, Allah is saying, and they say, none shall enter paradise except the Jews and the Christians. So this is an alleged statement.
Right.
People will start reading and saying, the Jews and the Christians. They say that we are not going to enter heaven. No, please do not look at it in this way. Allah is teaching us that when you hear such statements, you have to respect it. How? تِلْكَ أَمَانِيُّهُمْ. This is their statement. قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Say, bring forth your proof if you are but truthful. So this is a style, very respectful style. Yet you will not, first off, when you do this style, the non-Muslims will love you. They will say that this man is peaceful. You know, he's merely being honest with us. And he put us in a tight spot. I need more proof now. I need to bring him proof. And he's going to learn more about Islam when he's trying to find proof against it.
Yeah.
So this could be an invitation to him. So avoiding bad habits of conjectures, al-dhann. What does Allah say? Allah says here, وَإِن تُطَعْ أَكْثَرَ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ يُضِلُّكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. So if you follow the majority of the people on earth, they will get you away from the path of Allah. Why? إِن يَتَّبِعُونَ إِلَّا الظَّنَّ وَإِنْ هُمْ إِلَّا يخرصون, that they only follow conjectures. What is the meaning of conjecture? It is an information being brought over, incomplete information brought over from an unreliable source. So that means I will start being always negative. I'm starting to say that, look at the company that I'm working in. It has the salary is not good. And I start comparing, but I forget to compare myself with those lesser than me. So there has to be a balance. I have to make sure that I'm being grateful. I have to make sure that I'm worshiping Allah most of the day, at least most of the day. Why? Because if I only go to work and that's it, work is a form of worship because you're being grateful to Allah, you are, spending for your family. This is a worshiping Allah. So when I'm doing this, it's a form of charity. It's a form of honoring my family. I'm also taking care of my body. Allah has ordered me to take care of my body, and these negative effects in our lives, we have to end it. So from now on, as a Muslim, let us all make this pact together. Tomorrow is Monday. Let's fast Monday tomorrow, inshallah. Thursday, I'm going to be fasting, inshallah. We're going to be praying 5 times a day. We're going to be waking up for Fajr. We're going to be praying, inshallah, all the prayers and the times in the way that the Prophet ﷺ taught us. And may Allah accept our actions.
Barakallahu feekum, Brother Mustafa. Brother Wa'il, you want to tell us about also some verses from the Holy Quran, some hadith, and a story about of success, of real success.
Sure. Let's start with the story then.
Okay.
Okay. It's a story. The story is based on how a believer or how an average Muslim can get strength from the Quran regarding today's topic, abandoning a sin or abandoning a bad habit. There is a famous pious scholar. His name is Al-Fudayl ibn Iyad. He was, his story is very interesting though. At some point of time in his life, he was a thief and he used to rob people, especially travelers. And then, even parents at this time, they used to scare their kids with Al-Fudayl ibn Iyad. So it's like boogeyman now. If you don't do this, I'll get you boogeyman.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you don't do this, I'll get you Al-Fudayl ibn Iyad.
Yeah.
So he used to rob travelers and, cause a lot of fear to people. Okay, one night he's climbing up to the roof of a house. And then while he's on the top of the roof, next door house, an old man is praying and reciting. And he was reciting Surah Al-Hadid, chapter 27 of the Quran, and precisely verse number 16, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَمَا نَزَلَ مِنَ الْحَقِّ صدق الله العظيم. Has not the time come for the believers that their hearts get affected by the reminder from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the Quran, and the truth which has been revealed upon the believers? So he stopped. The verse starts with, has not the time come? So he stopped, he thought about the verse, and he contemplated and think about the verse. And he said, yes, the time came. Okay? So he went down from the roof, seeking a shelter. So he went to an area where a lot of travelers are there, and he kept thinking actually and contemplating about the verse, about the clear message, has not the time come? And he's telling to himself, yes, the time came. So he went, subhanAllah, he went, sat by the travelers, and he started to listen to a very interesting conversation. The group of travelers, they are arguing they should leave or not. One of them saying, let's make a move. And the other one saying, we should not make a move now because Al-Fadl ibn Iyad is out there, he might rob us.
Yeah.
So he's he kept thinking again about the statement. Okay, these people are innocent travelers, and the other guy was praying at night while I'm committing sins and terrifying everybody around. So he sat and he started repenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then he moved and sat next to Al-Haram al-Makki, or to the Kaaba in Mecca, and then he kept learning knowledge about Islam till he became a very famous scholar, and a lot of recent scholars did learn from him.
Subhanallah.
So the story shows us that how we can get, just like you were saying, that you were listening while driving at the at the break time, and you were listening to a certain verse, and it caught your attention, and you start thinking about it and contemplating. And this is the beauty of the Quran. This is the beauty of the Quran. It's the living message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to us nowadays. If we think about the authentic hadith, the messages behind the authentic hadith, and the messages within the verses of the Quran, definitely we can kick out bad habits and make sure that we stick to good habits. And plus that, two important things, if we really want to, this is the real message I want to get across today. The first one is that we should constantly judge ourselves and constantly think and evaluate our performance or our day-to-day actions with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, he says, حَاسِبُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ قَبْلَ أَن تُحَاسَبُوا. Hold yourself accountable before you'll be held accountable. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Ali Imran chapter 3 verse number 133 encourages us to do so by saying وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَجَنَّةٍ عرضها السماوات والأرض أعدت للمتقين. Hurry and compete to seeking the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and earning a paradise which its width is equal to the width of the heavens and the earth. One last thing to add up for seeking a good habit is commitment. I personally have a lot of nephews and nieces, and then my nephew who lives in the States, he's 14 years old, and his name is Omar, and he's very talented in soccer. And
how old is he?
14 years old. He's about to turn 15, and he got picked more than twice with the U.S. national soccer team. Yes, and he's very dedicated. His mom, she drives him 3-4 times a week, long drives to make sure that he does not miss his soccer practice.
It deserves.
Yes.
If he's going to be a professional,
it will pay off.
Yeah, it will pay off.
This is what we are
sure.
hoping to. So he's a very good, I would say, young man. I don't want to say kid. He's a very good young man, and he's very dedicated to soccer. And now 2 months back,
commitment.
Yes, he's very committed. And 2 months back, he fell while practicing soccer, and he had like a head concussion. So he, alhamdulillah, he got well now, and he's back to the same level or the same performance, because during staying home, he was very determined that after he gets well, he gonna get back on track. So determination and the level of commitment is very important to maintain the momentum of good habits and abstaining from bad habits.
That's a beautiful story, because he could have acquired bad habits while staying at home, or so the determination. It's a beautiful story. I wish him luck, by the way.
Okay, thank you.
And Brother Mustafa, we only have a couple of minutes, and I want you to wrap it up for us, please.
Of course, may Allah cure your nephew, and I hope everything is okay with him now. Believe one of the reasons, by the grace of Allah, that he has been committed, is that he avoided depression.
Yes.
Depression leads to a lot of these kind of things. They might say that, okay, you know what, I'm turned off right now with this whole dream of the football or soccer.
Right.
So let me achieve something else.
Right.
So always being variable, finding a different substitute in an uncontrollable fashion. This can be a negative thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So what he did is that he stood
He
out to
didn't
his
give
dream.
up.
He stood up to his dream.
Right.
I wish him all the success.
Thank you.
And may Allah bless him, of course.
Sure.
Now coming to just finalizing a few words, inshallah,
Inshallah.
is that never lose hope, because Umar ibn Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, he was on his way to kill the Prophet ﷺ. We all remember this story.
Yes.
He was there, and he was holding the sword.
When you mentioned that Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu radiallahu anhu was so strong. I was going to tell you the Prophet was 40 times stronger than him, right?
The Prophet
Alayhi
was
salatu
so
wassalam.
strong to the extent, and I will even explain about his strength, but
Yeah.
Umar ibn Khattab was on his way to kill the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Is there any greater sin than this?
No,
But
we cannot imagine.
subhanAllah, we cannot imagine. And Islamically speaking, for us to associate pardon with Allah, you know, is the worst kind of sin. And at the same time, to try to killing the Prophet ﷺ, it's another story.
Yeah.
It's another story. But look at where Umar Khattab is buried today. He's buried right next to you know, the Prophet ﷺ. Between him and, of course, is Abu Bakr. But he's right in the same chamber of the Prophet ﷺ. So never lose hope, because no matter what you did, if you're a drug addict, if you're addicted to something which Allah is angry, you know, of, if He's upset from, you always be honest with Allah, because Allah knows who you are. What, you know, like even Allah says that we shall not change you unless you change yourselves. It is truly a really important, you know, strategy in our lives, that if you expect Allah to change you, know that you are His servant. It is not the other way around. Allah, when He sees you truly from the deep, you know, roots of your hearts, you know, really wanting to change, He will help you, and He will help you in a way that you could have never imagined. So let's try to practice, you know, the positive, you know, things in our lives, and avoid gossiping, avoid lying, avoid, you know, trying to steal, kill, avoid, you know, being confident in sins and shameful in good deeds. It has to be the opposite. When people tell you, where are you going? I'm going to the mosque to pray. Oh, okay, go to the mosque. Some people, they do this. They're like, I'm just going to go pray and come back. No, what is this? What is
it? Should be the other way around.
Should be the other way around. It's like, I'm going to pray. Are you coming to pray? Just tell him, are you coming to pray? He's like, oh, I got to do something. Shh. I just go to pray. I'm not telling you let him hate it. I'm just saying that it has to be the other way around. That people should say that the honor is in obedience to Allah, which is the best form of positive natures. If you truly wish to find success in your life, the positive, you know, energy that you receive from the Quran, from the Sunnah, is unimaginable. I have never seen. It's a protein shake that you can take in your life. You know, let the Quran be your protein supplement. Let the Sunnah be your vitamin B12, vitamin B6. It's a substitute. And also take this real supplements, protein, everything. Make sure that you're organizing your time. Everything will be okay, inshallah.
MashaAllah. Barakallahu feekum. Dear brothers and sisters, unfortunately our time is up. On behalf of you, we thank very much our distinguished guests here in the studio, Brother Mustafa Abdul Qayyum and Brother Wa'il Wahab. It's been a great pleasure. I enjoyed it. And we hope, dear brothers and sisters, that you did it as well and it was beneficial. Until we meet again here on Huda Tonight, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.